Okay, I think we can start. Hi everyone, and welcome to the industry panel of the 2020th edition of the International Conference on Process Mining. I'm Marcello La Rosa and I'm here with Mark Keremans from Gartner. It is a pleasure to have a great panel here with us. And the idea today, as we mentioned yesterday, is to talk a bit about the market for process mining. Undoubtedly, the process mining market has been expanding a lot, especially in the last year. We've seen that in the news. We were in lockdown and somebody kind of unleashed himself and wrote at least 3 reports on the topic. And by the way, the latest one is the market guide for process mining that came out from Gartner just last week. And also besides Mark and Gartner, also other analysts and consultancy companies have shed light on different aspects of process mining, giving different perspectives and providing different take-home messages. So it is against this backdrop that we've invited the sponsors of ICPM 2020 to have with us and you, the audience, a honest conversation on the process mining market. So you're not going to hear about, rocket science. You're just going to hear about a bunch of people who have an informed opinion of where they think the market is going. So I have the pleasure of having with us Jean-Philippe Thompson, Vice President, Business Models and Enablement at Celonis, Dennis Prius, Partners Assurance of Ernst & Young, Rami Habib Eid Sabag, Co-founder and Managing Director of Lana Labs, Rasto Lavak, Founder and CEO of Minit Process Mining, Massimiliano Del Sante, CEO of MindVinio, Gero Decker, co-founder and CEO of Sagnavio, Julian Krumeik, Head Director of Product Management at Software AG, Sofia Passova, President and CEO of Stereologic, Marlon Dumas, co-founder of Apromore and Senior Advisor of HSPI, Lars Rinkenmeyer, Head of Data Management at Siemens Healthcare, Scott Opitz, Chief Marketing Officer at AbbVie, and Rudolf Kuhn, Process Mining Evangelizer and Head of Data Analytics at UiPath. I hope I pronounce all the names and roles correctly. They keep changing pretty rapidly these days. And it is with these panelists that we would like to talk about process mining. And the way we thought we would do this is by framing the discussion through a number of statements. And the idea would be very simple. First, we show our panel members a statement like this one. We all love process mining. And the members will simply have to use a thumbs up if they agree or thumbs down, so the old way, right? If they disagree. And then we will seek the opinion of some of the panelists as to why they voted this way or that way. Then we will use the polling functionality of Zoom to extend the vote to the audience. And we hope you guys all participate. For that, it's best that you use the Zoom client or the embedded Zoom Wove application. Otherwise, you might have some technical issues. And then after you guys have voted, we will open the floor for questions. So feel free to use the Q&A or raise your hand in the audience if you want to ask the panel about their opinion around that particular statement. Okay, so the instructions are very simple, but these days when everything is going online, you never know, right? We've seen all sorts of technical issues. So let's hope that everything works well. If not, we will just keep talking. All right, let's get serious with the first statement. The panel is ready? Process mining hasn't significantly evolved since last year. It's basically the same old soup. Do we agree or disagree? Oh, Ralph, I cannot see your hand. Wow, there you go. So we have a few people who agree and a few who disagree. The majority disagrees, but I can see Dennis who agrees. Dennis, why did you agree?
I think if you look at process mining from my perspective, I look at the use cases and how the clients embrace it. And then overall, it becomes the same soup because I haven't seen any new use cases that I haven't seen last year on the ICPM. So that's really my check is going through the clients and is there a new use case, a presentation I've never seen? I mean, besides last book, of course, but the use cases itself stay the same.
Right, so same use cases, new use cases, or do we need new use cases to determine that process mining isn't stagnating? Who wants to comment?
Well, from my perspective, I believe there has been a growth. I think the classical use cases are on horizontal processes like purchase to pay, order to cash, and these are not new, but these are expanding in a huge community. At the same time, I believe there are additional use cases like in manufacturing, like app-based use cases, like in BMW with navigation systems. So I believe there are some quite exciting innovations coming up or already in place, which we've seen.
I think in those cases, I think I agree with that. And I think there's a lot more industries that are now pursuing it more aggressively. But I actually think the evolution is a little different. I think the evolution is in the direction of technology, right? So I think the emergence of task mining technologies is showing great promise because it, you know, in our experience, while process mining and classic event-based process mining is very interesting in automation projects. The reality is that it doesn't provide deep enough detail in many cases, right, for actual implementation assistance. And so I think the emergence of task mining is showing a lot of promise there. And, you know, I can tell you that we have a lot of activity in that area. So I think that will continue.
Maybe Marcelo, you need to frame the question a different way. Is it really about process? So what is process mining? Is it about process mining technology, or is it about process mining tools and applications? Because what I see, you know, the adoption of the technology, how people are embracing it, how people are using it, use cases, you know, connecting process mining to RPA like we do it, and all of this is evolving, of course, heavily evolving. But the technology itself, the basic algorithm, of course, we are all working on our applications and the tools, but I didn't see, you know, really big involvement in the technology itself, like self-learning or self-grading, event log creation or whatever. So we are using the same algorithm. We are evolving the technology. We see adoption in the market, but the underlying technology, beside of the, you know, of the academic world, did not really evolve over the last year.
Absolutely. No, I fully agree. And I like the technology caveat that Scott brought into the topic here. But looking into the major large processes and where the data comes from, we should probably also push a little bit more the software vendors to give us the right APIs to consume either task mining ready data or process mining ready data. And maybe we should even have them maybe next year here in the panel, the big SAPs and the Oracles, because I think we need to push them a little bit more because bottom up from this community, doing quite good on the use cases using the existing technology, but bringing new technology in the back end systems of our customers to enable process mining is definitely a topic I see we have to push.
It's more about.
I agree with Mark. Mark talked to me many years ago about digital twin. I believe process mining will come to actual modeling, real-time modeling. Its future is digital twins and diagnostics.
But that's again what Dennis meant. So I think that it's not only the soup, but it's also kind of the dessert and the main supper and so on. And so it's kind of the combination, and you will see the combination, right? The combination is kind of well, as anything, it's all about combinations, interdependencies, and so on. So that's maybe another reframing of the soup. So not only kind of the soup itself, but how it mingles with all the rest, and how you also have the tools to consume the soup. So.
I kind of disagree, because I mean, robotic process mining as one of the use cases of task mining has emerged very strongly in 2020, and we have seen the first demonstrators and case studies where we go all the way from a user interaction log to a software bot that is running on an RPA tool, you know, who is very little to no human intervention in the middle, and the algorithms that are being used there are radically different from the ones that were used to discover BPMN process mining. And we see a lot in the what-if process mining, a big, strong move towards what-if process mining, you know, using process mining in conjunction with simulation in order to answer what-if questions.
I agree. I think that goes to you know, the depth of analysis that's available, right? And I think that's the area where we're going to see a lot of evolution. I mean, you know, one thing that we focused on from very early days, right, was that we were less about the more structured process things that I would find in, you know, order to cash or procure to pay type situations. We focused on healthcare, for instance, and so the degree of variability that you have in case management, right, presents a whole different set of challenges with respect to understanding what the root causes are to certain behaviors. So I think what we're going to find is, I think, a few things, right? One is, I think we're going to continue to see growth of the analysis tools, which is good, right? I think that's key. And in fact, I would argue that that's one of the catalysts for why task mining is emerging, right? We need to go deeper. But I think the other thing that's going to happen is you're going to have industry specificity, right? You're going to have solutions that are tailored to being able to address the particular nuances of problems that occur industry by industry. Those that are heavily case management based type processes versus those that are more rigid or more structured type processes. There's also the diversity of the data that has to be considered as part of it. And so, you know, one of the things which many of you may be aware of, right? I mean, about a year ago, or a little more than a year ago, we joined forces with Abby, you know, from Timeline PI. And one of the drivers for that was to basically get access to, you know, unstructured data so that we can incorporate that as part of the analysis. And so I think we're going to see innovations in all of these. So I really think it comes back to what I said originally, though. I think it's about technology evolution. The products are not going to sit still. If they do, they're going to die, right? So we have to continue to provide tools that help a broader range of users actually get access and get some benefit out of the products. It's not just about putting up, you know, pretty visualization, right? You actually have to have investigative tools that support different use cases.
So to wrap up, the panel thinks that there are new use cases that are emerging, perhaps not as many as we would expect, but definitely we disagree with that statement, with some exceptions, right? So let's ask the same question to the audience and let's see what they think about this statement. So we've just launched the poll and you can vote live, and we should be able to see the votes live. And of course, this is a process mining conference, so the first statement was pretty simple, right? 70% of the audience basically disagree with the first statement, and there is a new hope for process mining, right? So we are all in business, guys. Any question from the audience to our panelists on this specific point before we move to the next statement? All right, so we've got a question. Kemindra Najaraj. Kemindra, would you like to ask the question directly?
Yeah, thank you, Marcelo. My question is, you know, what should we do as partners and advocates of process mining to support the I guess the democratization of industry-based use cases?
Who wants to take that one? Thank you, Kemindra.
Well, I guess since I brought up industry use cases, I better have an answer to that. So
you better have.
I think the keys are several, right? I think one is to actually have effectively the right analysis tool for the job, right? Again, as I mentioned, certain industries are much more case management oriented, much more highly variable processes versus structured processes. So at a fundamental level, you've got to have those types of tools. I think beyond that, though, one of the demands, and I think this is going to be key to the broader expansion of process mining, and I agree with the other panelists that we have to be careful with that term. That's a very big umbrella term. I think the expansion is going to be driven by being able to deliver what appears to be more pre-built solutions, right? So the ability to go in and say that for a particular business use case, there's a starting point, right? People are not starting from scratch. There are basic frameworks, templates, metric definitions, things that are very specific to that are going to require subject matter expertise so that those users don't have to try to figure it all out for themselves.
Thank you, Scott. Dirk?
Yes, thanks, Marcello. So one of the problems I see in kind of this gap between research, right, which keeps on running ahead, but maybe in a bubble, and the things that industry faces is, say, tearing down the wall. And I mean, Apromore is here kind of in a sweet spot because you have roots in research and are building a product. So how are the other vendors seeing this? Kind of what can you do to kind of tear down that wall and kind of make the flow of information kind of go better, right? Bring us the use cases, bring us the data, so we can kind of have that impact in a more meaningful way, rather than kind of inventing things in a bubble that then end up in papers and drawers.
Thank you, Dirk. Who wants to take that?
Maybe I can add here. So in the past, we've always faced the challenge that we as a vendor, we have tons of client data, and you need that data for academic research, right? But from a legal perspective, it's super hard to give the data to you, right? We can't just, send it over so that you can do your magic. So I think what works best is to have joint projects together on real client case studies to first of all solve the issue of access to data and all of the legalities around that, but also to be able to iterate fast with the prototypes that we jointly build on those specific client projects.
I definitely think as well that collaboration will be key here. And I see this as well. And Lars and I had a quick chat on, we need to share more data, but we need to also embrace an attitude to it. So for me, it's a little bit like a paradigm change. If you want to collaborate and innovate together and not sharing the data and basically putting legal in front of it will not help. So definitely, I fully agree with Gero. We need to line up collaborations, maybe joint ventures even, that go all together. And if you look at joint ventures between industry, vendors, and university, there are really only a few. So of course we have the task force, but definitely also on the local levels, we need to push this more.
And putting legal behind, coming from an auditor, is quite a thing, isn't it?
I mean, it's really like, if you look at how startups work today, everybody shares the idea from the beginning and everybody buys in. But if you look at established businesses, they basically still out of let's say, we keep it for us mode. So, and that's a little bit the two different, let's say, dimensions, approaches that come together. So a little bit more startup mode would also be good for some of our industry clients, of course. But in our particular money area, we need to do this.
The way we are trying to stay up to date is, our development center is located in Eindhoven next to the university. And we constantly have a bunch of students, working for UiPath on process mining. And we really work very, very closely with the university. So for us, that's the best way, really to learn about new development.
All right, in the interest of time, guys, maybe in the interest of time, we should move to the next statement, which anyway is related. Mark, you want to take over?
But I think this is from a different perspective, because the previous one was about what's happening, what's on the supply side, right? How is the soup served and all these kind of things. But this is more about the clients, so the other side. So this is a statement about the clients, from the client's perspective today, they are still not ready to go just beyond process maps. And that's the statement. So I think, we have unanimity. There is unanimity in this. So let's go back. Well, maybe Gero, because you have a long time in the space with mapping and process maps, right? Even before the mining stuff. So any comments?
Yeah, I feel I have to comment. Serving a lot of the people who map and model out there. We just did a count a couple of weeks ago. So by now, already 2.5 million processes have undergone improvement through our platform. So if anybody claims that mapping and modeling is dead or is not being applied, I think we can prove them wrong with tons of data that it's alive and kicking and it's still growing. But there's a big trend, and this is not only true for process management professionals. This is a theme, throughout, that whenever you can go data-driven, you have to go, or you want to go data-driven, right? And I think the process community is undergoing the same theme. So whenever you have access to data and you can get to insights faster, or you can get to better insights, you want to do that, right? But on the other hand, obviously, process mining is not the one-size-fits-all for process analysis, right? That's why we have task mining as additional technology, but still for a large portion of processes, going to the people, leveraging crowd intelligence is still the way to go, because you simply don't have the data, or it's too hard, or it takes too much time to collect it from 15 systems, and you rather ask people directly.
Yeah, let me maybe also comment on Gero's answer. So I can fully agree with you. So I mean, we have also a large customer base using ARIS for many years to build up their process maps in our repository. And when I speak to my clients, so they are seeing really a lot of push regarding process mining. So it's becoming more and more hot from their perspective. And I would also not say it's either or. So it's not about let's only go data-driven versus human-driven process mapping. So it's really the combination that makes most sense to our customers. So also we have a look at how the process maps look like today. We enrich it with more information from the data side, but also enrich the process discovered models with more manual tasks that were designed by our manual customers. So it's I think clients are definitely ready.
Maybe I can add.
So we launched the poll
from a Salonis perspective also. I think it's not about process maps not being valuable. I think if you look at the question also, are customers not ready to go beyond process maps? And to that, I would say I disagree, right? I think companies can not afford not to do that, right? Plain and simple. I think it's, on the one hand, there's proof in the numbers. If you look at the market growing, the number of customers, etc. But it's also, if I look at the Salonis customer base, what's really interesting is we see customers across every sector now taking that step towards process mining, or to go beyond process mapping, right? It's companies and industries that a few years back, we would have described them as rather hesitant. So take the financial services industry, for example, right? And today, some of our most innovative customers are in banking. So I think it's, if you don't take that step to go data-driven, you could risk falling behind, right? And one additional thing I would say is also looking at the current situation, right? I think, the current pandemic, as tragic as it is, I think it's also an accelerator for using a data-driven approach to process analysis as well.
Let's take a look at what the audience thinks about this. So let's see if we have okay, somebody agrees. I know Will's opinion on this one, and it's actually quite different than the panel opinion. That's why we thought about this question.
That's why it's Will.
Is Will raising his hand or not yet? Yes, he raised his hand. All right, so the majority disagrees, but 25% actually agrees to the statement. Will?
So Marcello, to see who is right, we should look in 20 years, right? I think the panel also said that. I think we come from a time where we were just doing modeling. And I think in many cases, just making the model was very unproductive because these models were kind of something very disconnected from reality. Then the data became available and it became visible to see what was truly going on. I think the problem that we have exactly at this point in time is that on the one hand, people are used to the classical models showing, let's say, kind of the process that one would like to see. And on the other side, seeing process mining results which show that reality is very, very different. And I think the future would be not that there will be no modeling or no mining, but that these two worlds will come together. And I think if you look at the developments in the market, you can see also exactly that. I think modeling is particularly useful not to map the as-is processes, but to map the to-be processes based on actual facts. And I think that is where the two worlds will meet.
If I can have a remark on that, and I think it's interesting to see that we had a webinar like last week and with 1,400 participants, and all of these people know about process maps as the classical modeling. But if you, I also polled about who's aware and who has read about process mining. 65% didn't have heard about process mining. 65% of all 1,400 people. So that still leaves some kind of, okay, where are we? Are we in between? Is this now? I think we have to do a lot more about kind of the awareness yet again, right? But well, you can have different perspectives, because if 65% doesn't know yet about mining, well, there's a lot of things that are going to happen. And so beyond.
So then this 65% will start with process maps, right?
They already know about the maps, yes.
They already know, indeed.
But maybe one.
Mark, there's another question, or anyone else wants to comment on Will's comment? Yes, Rami?
I also just want to say, so people who are already using process maps, I think they're very much willing to go and use process mining. For them, it's very clear what the benefits actually are, and it's a no-brainer, some sort of. So this is at least our experience. And using then the process maps, for example, for conformance checking, to get an automatic diagnose where the S is. Deviates from the to be, I think is for many just like a great benefit and a no-brainer. So I think merging both together, this is what we see a lot in the usage of our tool as well.
Maybe I can comment on that from the Siemens experience, which is actually very different, to be honest. Interestingly, at Siemens, we've had thousands of people educated in business process modeling who've been very active throughout the last decades. And for me, it was amazing that we failed to convince those people to merge from process modeling to process mining. Very few of them only were open to adopt the new data-driven insights and leverage this new understanding of what's really happening. And also conformance checking, and maybe I'm preempting here the question number 4, but conformance checking never really started to take off at Siemens. And I think it's still, for us, amazingly, but it's still two distinct camps which don't really complement each other. And that's just the experience which we've made throughout the last 6, 7, 8 years.
Thanks, Lars. There's a question from Mark McGregor. Mark?
Yeah, so my question is, when I listen, what do you mean when you're saying process maps? Because on one hand, I'm hearing a lot of the process mining people talking about saying, well, it's not about process mapping, it's about doing process mining. Now have a look at my process map. Well, okay, then we're really confusing, and we're not using a clarity of language of what is it we actually mean, and are we actually causing the confusion for the end customers, because actually they get two categories of vendor, both using the same vocabulary to describe something completely different. So are we the problem rather than anybody else?
So the question was formulated in a way not to mention BPMN models, because as you know, the very first step in process mining, and specifically in automated discovery, is to discover a flow chart, or in jargon, a directly follow graph of your event log. And then the next step for those clients who are already at that level of maturity is to lift that process map up to the level of a BPMN model, where they can understand the specific ordering between different activities, so they can distinguish parallelism from mutually exclusive paths, and so on. So,
but that's
and then of course beyond process maps, there is a range of other tools that we can use with process mining: conformance checking, variant analysis, predictive analytics. So the question was centered around when we talk about clients that have started adopting process mining, that have adopted process mining, do we see them stopping basically at the process map, which is kind of the very, very first step, or are they ready to consume more than this basic type of analytic?
Okay,
I
well,
believe,
and of course, we kept it open.
Yeah.
Excuse
To me,
me,
I
I
go
believe,
back to asking then Gero and the guys from Aris and Salonis to restate what they were saying, because they were saying something very different in terms of the use of process maps and the use of process mining. There was no one suggesting that the notation had to be BPMN. It could be using flowchart symbols or anything else. There's still process maps. So process map is not synonymous with BPMN.
Yeah, but if you have a look at the standard BPMN models, for example, you can enrich the pure structural process flow also by additional resources and artifacts. So like organizational units, who takes care about something. You can maybe also enrich it by documents, etc. So things that you would typically not see in a standard process flow that is discovered by process mining. So you can have an even broader view on your processes by using process maps. But on the other hand, of course, if you analyze the flow as such and you want to improve the flow through your systems, through your organization, then I think the generated models in process mining makes a lot of sense, because there you have really the data behind it to make really fact-based decisions from that sense. So this is why I said, okay, it's not either or, so it's really the combination of both.
I think, well, in the interest of time, we have to move to the next question. But well, I think, well, when we were together with the steering committee on process mining, I think everybody agrees that we have to do something about the terminology, because there is so much terminology, and well, this is of course strange hearing
but
this.
you can help us with that, Mark.
Yes,
right?
yes, from Gartner. So, but okay, but I think Marcello, we should go to the next question.
Yep. So statement number 3, we don't have the data, or our data isn't good enough, are still the most common roadblocks to process mining. True or false? Okay, so we've got an undecided there, and then some true and some for 2 undecided. Oh, 3 undecided. Any of the undecided would like to answer?
Yes, absolutely. You know, guys, I think when we talk to any major company, any serious company using any type of IT systems to support business processes, there's a lot of data, and the data is good enough and it's there. But the biggest challenge in process mining is, and I'm in this business for more than 10 years, is always to get the right data and to get the data right. So there's a reason, you know, why most of our process mining tools out in the world does not support any type of data transformation. You know, look at most of the vendors, or look at your tool. How do you do data transformation? Typically, we see data transformation happening in some SQL databases with some weird scripts, whatever, or Python or whatever. And if you compare this to the traditional BI tools, nobody would seriously consider to transform data in a database for the usage with Tableau or Click or whatever. So it's not about the problem is not that data is not there. The problem really is how to access the data and how to transform the data. And this is, we do very, very differently, or we all do it very differently, but that's the biggest challenge for our customers typically.
But I think this touches on a number of different things, though. I mean, it even touches on the previous question. The reality is, if somebody's motivated enough to try to find an answer to something, this data question, and that's why I was undecided about it, because it really depends on the case, right? In some cases, it's an insurmountable roadblock. In other cases, they'll move heaven and earth to get to the data because they're motivated to solve a particular problem, right? So I think it really comes down to what the nature of the problem is they're solving. But, you know, Rudy, I probably have to thank you for setting me up perfectly on that one. You know, this is why, you know, in our product, I mean, we invested very early in building in ELT tools, right? So the ability to get that, because your ability to load things on the local environment are often limited, right? So the ability to load data into the cloud and then transform it there. But candidly, even with that, one of the challenges you find related to data is a lot of companies already have data governance infrastructures in place, and they're not going to allow you to have direct access. And in fact, we just announced, in fact, yesterday, a global alliance with Alteryx, right? Because what we're finding is that we have a tremendous amount of overlap with customers who are using Alteryx for BI reasons, right? And it's exactly the same event data that they're trying to show on a BI dashboard that would be valuable to be able to analyze in a process mining, process intelligence tool, right? So I think that I think we do, Rudy's exactly right. I think we have to make it easier. The idea of telling somebody to go and try to write 10 pages of SQL script to try to get their data organized in a proper way is never going to work. I think the other thing is there's a lesson here, and I think there's a theme here with a lot of what we're talking about, and that is, I previously came out of the BI world, and so I know that space really well for about a 15-year period. And one of the things we saw there is I think the way it evolved as a marketplace and as use cases, I think is going to be paralleled here quite a bit. And one of the reasons I say that is that, one of the challenges in the BI world is getting people past the idea that they need second decimal place precision on everything, right, for it to be valuable. And one of the things that we find is that, oftentimes one of the most valuable things we can help our customers understand is the fact that sometimes just literally the slope of the line is the most valuable thing to understand. Am I improving? Is it getting worse? What's the rate of improving or the rate of decline, right? And so I don't necessarily have to have perfect data, which is often often an argument, right? We're not ready for that. But it's incumbent upon us to help the users understand there's still a probative value to being able to use data, understanding its limits without having to wait for perfection. And I think
Thank you, Scott. Let me stop you there. Let me stop you there because Rasto raised his hand. Rasto?
Yes. So guys, I believe, of course, we can divide it so there's structured and unstructured data or information where you can find it easily. So there are systems where, it's about on what we are doing right now is a building connector. So we are building connectors to a different system to make this experience for the customer much more fluent. Of course, there is another way to look at it. There, if you are talking about the emails or Excels or this level of the detail, sometimes going to the level a little bit lower, like on the even task level, then of course, after, the task mining is evolving a bit. So that will be another great source of the information, which you can use for more precise analysis. So, yeah.
I think there's one caveat which we haven't touched at all. I see a lot of decision-making in processes, and Julian touched on it a little bit, that is maybe modeled, but not at all in any data. It's people sitting together at meetings. It's people discussing contracts that are still printed. So there's, from my perspective, also a lot of decision-making, which is really judgmental. And especially in audit, these processes are really key that we look at them, and they're not in the data at all. And that's why, from my perspective, having decision-making in human beings, discussions and the caveats of that in data, we're far away from that.
All customers come to us via stereo logic and have a unique approach to process mining. And all customers come to us only because of one reason. Why? It's too difficult to work with data, to create logs using standard approach to process mining. I believe future for an industry to simplify everything for customers. Customers don't need to know what is conformance checking. They need to know, push this button and you will have results. It's customer level. Second idea.
Hang on. I see some disagreement there from some of the faces. Who wants to comment on that first statement? Customers don't need to understand what conformance checking is.
No, maybe you did not understand me. Idea not exactly conformance checking. Idea all signs should be behind customer screen. Do you know? Customer needs to know which buttons to push. That's it. But we see now customers, thank you, Gartner, or maybe universities, they now know more than professors. Do you know, we're surprised. They ask so detailed questions about process mining. I am surprised. I believe it's huge work of Gartner and all universities. Do you know?
Mark.
Well, maybe the majority of the software vendors here have more educated or better informed customers. So our customers definitely know what conformance is and everything. So yeah, I strongly disagree here, Sophia.
Guys, let's see what the guys in the meantime. Sorry, let's see what the audience thinks. Otherwise, I think it would be an impasse. So let's see. We just open the votes. This is more interesting. I've said that. All right. So, and Paul, share result, 57% actually agree that this is considered, perceived at least, as a common roadblock, the most common roadblock. So, all right, this is a disconnect.
What happens, this is my observation, is when we have a potential customer, it goes in two directions. Either the data is there beautifully and you can start doing process mining, or it's not there, it's unstructured, it's incomplete. There's no amount of ELT that will fix that the data is incomplete, and then you have to work on it. So it's exactly the answer, is that it depends. It's like, it can go both ways.
Let me maybe bring another dimension into the discussion. I mean, I think it's like for us at Software AG, we have connectors to the typical systems, and I think it's not the most common roadblock anymore to get data. But another issue that
I guess the point, Julian, I guess the point that Marlon wanted to make was if the data is there, you can build a connector and grab the data. But if the data is not structured in the first place, or you are missing the minimum requirements for an event log, then there's no connector or ETL pipeline that will help. If you don't log the case ID, that has happened to me, you have to make it up, right? So you have to start logging.
Sure, but I guess there are pretty many standard processes running on standard applications that you can connect to get started with process mining. But I would say also the whole topic about data privacy, I think that's for me, or from my experience, at least also a very big issue for our customers. So they have the data, they have the tool, but they were maybe not allowed internally, maybe because of the work council, whatever, to get really started. So they have everything ready, but they need to have the organizational agreement to do so. I think that's also, I would also not argue the most common roadblock, but also a very important dimension to add here.
But Julian, that might be right for Germany in some cases, but not for the rest of the world. That's
not
Come on, guys, let's not start with nationalism. Nina from the audience has a question. Nina?
Yes, thank you. That's a great panel, Marcello. My question is, well, data is, I think, usually there. And yes, you need to do stuff to get it to be workable. Question is, do you always know when you start some kind of an analysis what data you would need? Because you cannot use all the data there is there, but how do you know what data to use?
You are right.
Before
there is a lot of data, as Rudy
said. Any project, before you start pulling data, transforming data, whatever, you first need to talk to the customer. You need to understand the challenge. You need to understand the questions, which directions they are going, and only then you can start, to think really about the processes, the data, and where to start. So
why do most customers start with the default?
Sorry, guys, one at a time. Lars?
Yeah, why do most customers start with the default standard soup of P2P in order to cache? So there, they typically would have curated data from a single source system, which is easy to start, But then once you get more creative, saying, I want to really have my customer journey with Excel and calls and whatever, then we're getting into trouble, since there, getting the connectors and getting the data all together, that's a challenge.
Yep. So I would also say that data is not the roadblock, but actually missing IT resources in many cases, because you need to extract the data. I mean, that's the easy part, and then you need to put the data together. So data transformation and so on. And this is, I think, where many customers actually need help, and where we as a vendor also provide our customers with a coding modules that helps them. And
that's the point. You shouldn't be forced to extract the data. Why don't you leave the data where it is and simply read it and transform it?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I mean. Like, this is access to data, but you need to make sense of the data, right? And this is exactly where you, at the moment, often need data scientists and people who help to put the data from different systems together. And this is actually the part where we also focus on that to make this easy and, let's say, automatic.
But I think, well, we're putting too much effort in the data. So just 1 minute, well, half a minute. So because if I see a lot of clients and we also suggest them to start, right? It's about, okay, to get them starting. And that's, I think that's the beauty of process mining. You don't need all the data to start right away. You can just start with like the points that you have, the data points, and let's start and see what's coming out, and then going to refine. And that's, I think that's how many people that I have seen have started very small and then take on with the rest. So I think there's a benefit.
Mark, I think that's spot on. And I think it goes to what I said earlier about the parallels with the BI space. I mean, when we think about, you know, when the clicks and the tableaus entered the market against the sort of old guard BI vendors, I mean, the reality was it was all about democratizing access to information, right? And by the way, there were a lot of dashboards created that had a lot of errors in them because those people really didn't know all of the details about what data they were loading, and they didn't have any governance. And so there were lots of flaws with it. But they began to experiment, they began to explore. And what it ended up doing was, you know, I hear a lot of comments on here that talk about IT and getting to data and connecting to systems. And candidly, I don't think that's the problem. I think the problem is we're not focused on the business user, and the users that we're dealing with in most cases, I would not classify them even remotely close to being coders. They're technology savvy, but they're not coders, right? They're business analysts. They understand technology, but they're not going to go and learn some terribly complex tool. We have to help them with that. And I think that, you know, clearly, I think the comment made earlier about, you know, trying to make those things easier, I'm a little dubious of saying that I can hide it all behind a button. But the reality is that they do need to understand what's going on in the code itself. But the point is, I think it's critical that you do get them started, just as Mark said, because our biggest advances are when somebody starts, they start to uncover things that they didn't expect, right? In fact, I think we probably could all say we've experienced the case where someone loaded up some data and they said, your software's wrong, because that can't possibly be right. We can't possibly do it that way, right? And then you show them in the data and you show them the proof and say, but that's what your data says, right? And say, oh, well, geez, we didn't know that. Oh, that's right. Under that weird exception, that happens, right? That's exactly the ammunition that we find is what they take back if they have a dependency on IT to get them more data, because now they've built the business case for why process mining is critical as yet another tool in their toolbox.
And I would
thank you.
Maybe just briefly this, you know, while I agree that the minimal requirements need to be in place, right, in order to do process mining. And there's this idea, and Mark, maybe you know this, it's from Gartner, which is called the sufficient version of the truth, right? So, you know, sufficient enough to create trust in the solution, right? And sufficient enough to improve the quality of decision-making and impacting business and improving business outcomes, right? But it does not mean that you need to embark on a never-ending journey of master data optimization, you know, data quality projects, etc. But do that in a very focused way, in a way where you look at different areas of your data that have the highest ROI. So make sure, for example, that your payment terms are up to date, or that customer billing addresses are correct, right? Those are things that have a significant impact on the business, right? And as you go along, right? And I don't think you need to do a 5-year master data optimization project before you start with process mining.
Thank you, Jan. Guys, in the interest of time, statement number 4.
Yes,
Mark?
statement Well, we ended last year, I think, in the first internet conference on process mining with exploring what is this thing doing, this task automation or RPA. So this is about the follow-up on this. So this is just a simple statement. So RPA has become the cash cow or driver of process mining.
I will not call it a cash cow. Oh, sorry, we have to say first.
I'm hoping you can measure the slight angle in my thumb there. It's relative agreement and disagreement.
Slide upwards angle, right?
Slide upwards.
Yeah. Let's maybe first go to who should supposed to be the specialist now in RPA, Rudy?
Yes, of course. I mean, guys, what else do you expect that I agree? You know, there's a reason why UiPath acquired Process Code last year. So it's a little bit more than 365 days ago, on the 3rd of October last year. Because we see our 7,000 customers worldwide. They are longing for more understanding about the process they have. The biggest question for them really is on the RPA roadmap, what is next? What can be automated? And what's the impact of RPA on our processes? And process mining is the perfect tool for it. So the combination of process mining and RPA, for me, it's like the diagnosis and the treatment. You know, it strongly belongs together. Without diagnosis, you cannot really treat your problem, and without a proper
But you mean the process mining is the treatment, right?
Sorry, say again?
You mean the process mining is the treatment to get rid of the bots, right?
No, it's not. You know, in a perfect world, hey, listen, guys, in a perfect world, there would be no need for process mining or for RPA, because every process would be perfect and all systems would be integrated. But that's not the case. We are struggling with the processes, so we need to understand what's happening, and we need really to increase efficiency by connecting systems across all the boundaries we have, and RPA is a great tool for that. So for me, really, RPA and process mining strongly belongs together, and every tool without the other one is less than 50% of the value.
I would like to also have a few comments on that, guys. So I believe it's not a cash cow, but I have to say, you know, all these stories about the RPA, how 50% projects failed, and and we can save the world with process mining. I believe, yes, process mining can definitely help there, but I believe, all these guys, they need to go one step back. That means that not looking only on the automation that they will save everything what they have, but and make the automation and process excellence, but really looking from the perspective of that, that process mining can help in the cases where, where it's not about the automation. We had a lot of projects with the really Fortune 500 customers where the customers, the automation part of the cost cutting was much more slower than the standard process mining use cases like rework analysis and plenty of other things, So this one step back, going from the RPA and automation, pushing automation first, I think this is important. This is the message. And yes, it's generating, sometimes it's a good entry point, because if the customers start to go for more complex on all of this, not only on the automation part, then of course it's generating a nice projects, with the customers.
I would like to hear Massimiliano, who hasn't talked much. Massimiliano.
Yes, thank you, Marcello. About RPA, I mean, I think process mining is really an enabler for RPA. I think RPA is the tip of the iceberg. So we should not consider only RPA, but all the stakeholders. The capability of process mining is to analyze events. Events can be generated by RPA, can be generated by the different stakeholders. So you have case management solution, you have BPM. At the end, the capability of process mining is to provide you the big picture, and with the big picture, then process mining and task mining together, because if you want to consider improvement and the enablement of RPA, you cannot do it without task mining, because you need to go, at a lower level compared to what you can analyze using business transaction. So you need to have process mining and task mining together. But with that, you can really identify on one side, what will be the real return of investment of your RPA journey, and on the other side, how to scale. Because typically, if you look at RPA projects, they are automating tasks, a set of tasks. They are not providing you the overall picture. So if you want to really managing the scalability of RPA projects, you need process mining. You cannot scale without a solution like process and task mining together. So I think this is a really key point. And based on our experience, yes, for sure, we were able to close the deals thanks to the easy way of identify return of investment by putting together process mining and RPA.
I believe this problem was resolved hundreds of years ago, do you know? Because no synthesis without analysis. You cannot create without analysis. It means it's no questions. Nothing we can create. BPM, other system, nothing is possible without analysis, without process mining, without task mining.
Why do you think so many RPA projects fail? Because they don't do exactly what you just said.
Exactly, and let's be honest, when you look at RPA projects, also the best efficient way in terms of kicking the results in a process is to eliminate steps that are unnecessary, not to automate them. And that's sometimes also forgotten, and you can only bring this back by big picture overview to Rasto's point. Absolutely. The big picture is key here because there's so much task automated, which makes no sense.
Hey, Dennis, I fully agree.
I agree.
Just to be very
In the
clear,
meantime, guys, sorry, in the meantime, we asked the audience to vote and 60% disagree with that statement. And I guess the truth is in between. RPA is definitely a great use case for process mining, but it's much more than that. Let me move, given that there aren't questions from the audience, let me take advantage of that, skip one, and move, given the time, move to the last statement. Now let's close on a high with this one.
Yeah.
In 3 years, process mining will disappear as a standalone market. I knew about you, Jan. Let's see somebody else. Gero, quite predictable. Rudy as well. Massimiliano is a yes. Marlon and Julian halfway through. Dennis, it's about auditing with process mining, and Lars is definitely down. Sophia down, Rami up. All right, guys. Somebody would like to comment on the app. Jan.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I'll start. So I think it's already today, it's funny because if I look at customers that are sort of driving the most value with the solution, right? Those customers are already telling us, I mean, they are telling us, we're not telling them, but they're telling us, you are doing so much more than process mining, right? It's the real-time data extraction, it's creating intelligent skills that monitor the process on an ongoing basis, applying machine learning, automated improvement opportunities, all those things, right? And so here is, I think, where things will be headed. You know, there's a problem that enterprises have, which is business processes running across a rigid and fragmented landscape, right? You know, enterprises on average, they use 500 and counting, you know, business applications, and the number is increasing, right? And so I think that what we'll be seeing is a convergence of several solutions and tool sets, right? To an intelligent layer that will sit on top of that existing landscape and which is truly operational. And so how does that layer work? Just in a nutshell, I mean, I think one, process mining is the foundational technology to that. So, you know, you need to extract the data from all the relevant systems, put it in the right context in real time, but then you need to go ahead and interpret that information as well. So it needs to, you know, you need to apply machine learning, you need to, for ongoing processes, be able to identify points of friction and recommend course of actions. And then it has to go further, and it has to not only diagnose and recommend, but also take automated action. So that's also where RPA or other automation solutions come into play, right? And so to me, there's sort of no doubt about this fact that operational usage is going to become more and more important. We're going to see a whole lot more of it. And I think that what will that market be? That's a tricky question. I think time will tell. You know, I think Gartner talks, for example, about digital ops, right? I think time will tell, and it might not be called process mining. But I do think, the bottom line is, I still think process mining will play a very important role in that.
Maybe I can also comment, guys. Yes, I think I'm here with you that 3 years it's not enough, and how I see it, of course, the process mining is also evolving for more complex protein intelligence, offering. That's clear. We already mentioned that, like prediction simulations and or even automation in the process mining vendors and task mining. On the other hand, we see it, maybe Rudy can comment on that. Even guys at UiPath or somebody, if the situation will be, of course, the BPM, the big vendors from the RPA BPM space, they will acquire some process mining vendors. That's clear here. That will be a movement of the market. But Rudy, maybe you can comment. I believe that you guys are not only doing this use case for RPA and automation, but you are offering process mining as a separate offering. So on the process mining market, you're competing as a UiPath. On the process mining tenders, you're part of all Magic Quadrants, or I will say, market guides, whatever. And process mining is evolving in a parallel. So it's really depends how we are looking on that. But I believe in 3 years, it will be not like totally out of the market. It will evolving.
Right. Really what we see is that, we are really working on a heavily, a very, very seamless integration of process mining in our hyperautomation platform. And Mark and Gardner, I mean, you really nailed it. You said for hyperautomation, you need more than just RPA. You need, support for long-lasting or long-running process workflows, data analytics, process mining, AI, everything. So look at our hyperautomation platform. Of course, when process mining is providing transparency, and you need transparency if you want to improve any process. And of course, as a former consultant, there are many ways how a process can be improved. And RPA is a great one, but it's only one of many ways how a process can be improved. It's not the only one, of course not. But on the other hand side, for every RPA project, I really believe that either for the process diagnosis or for process monitoring and for the reacting on it, you really need process mining, and it needs to be connected to the rest of the platform. So I believe that process mining will disappear as a standalone market, because the integration with ERP systems, with RPA systems, with all the other systems out there is more important than just visualizing the process.
And I agree 100%.
I'm sorry, guys, we need to wrap up and close.
Yes, we are wrapping up. Thank you. We would like to, for one last comment and then a question from the audience. So we'll be done in a couple of minutes. Thank you, Nicolo. Yes, Marlon?
Yeah, I was saying I agree 100% with Rudy. We are here, all of us, to help companies improve their business processes. Process mining is one tool, and many others in the BPM lifecycle. We have to keep that in mind. So we are not here to exist for another 5 to 10 years as a standalone market, but to blend in the best possible way with all the other tools that can help our customers improve their processes.
Thank you. And I'm sharing, sorry, Lars, yes, quick comment.
Can I just give an advice to the collected leading process miners who are here in the panel? In my view, the evangelization of the market about process mining has taken a long time. I've been active in Siemens for 7 years, and I assume maybe 5 to 10% of Siemens have understood about process mining. And I would advise not so easily to give up on this awareness about process mining and move to another hype word where you lose quite a lot. So please keep in mind that what you've built up there with all this awareness, this is an asset which shouldn't be given up too easy.
Mark, that's a message for Gardner, isn't it?
Yeah, but no, okay, but and only 10 seconds, 10 seconds. I always compare this to a market that has been there for many years.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, for business rules management. So it was there, and within 5 years, it kind of converged into many other markets, and it was just the same. An engine, an algorithm, right? So think about that. But that's my.
Thank you very much, everyone. And sorry, we ran a bit late. We have to close. We have the award ceremony now. Thank you very much, and we can continue the discussion in Vuva.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
And long live process mining, by the way.
More than 3 years.